if you look at Islam in the Middle East and you develop this chronology, what becomes very evident is that after Muawiyah, kingship was brought into Muslim consciousness, something that was not there during the life of the Prophet and was not there during the life of the four rightly guided caliphs, Abu Bakr, Omar, Usman, and Ali. So most of the Muslim narratives, and even non-Muslims who write, they agree on this, that with the rise of Muawiyah, you have monarchy brought into Muslim society in a way it was not there before. Now, when you go to Imam Jafar, what makes him acceptable to the two groups, the Sunnis and the Shiites, in the 5th generation after Hussein, was the fact that Jafar's mother was from the line of Abu Bakr. So you have Abu Bakr's line coming together with the line of Ali. So in Imam Jafar, you find someone who has legitimacy on both sides. He can claim that I'm a descendant of Abu Bakr and I'm also a descendant of Ali. And so when people talk about the two sects and the manner in which they were able to come together, this person becomes very important in terms of his genealogy and in terms of his own literary works. And he would influence many of the Shiites and create some kind of disposition and willingness to embrace the Sunnis. Now, as I said to you, the Kharijites would become notoriously unpopular among the Muslims because once they disagree with Ali and they became political assassins because they developed a tradition of attacking the political leaders with whom they disagree, and of course, this gave them a bad name. Now, the rise of Muawiyah and his successors, Yazid and all the others, would give rise to a group called the Umayyads. And the Umayyads will become a force for over a century in the history of Islam. From the death of Ali right up to 750, almost 100 years of dominance for them. Now, during their dominance, the Umayyad were able to create a new political system which brought into their embrace Christians and Jews and Zoroastrians. So you now have a pluralistic Islamic order with Abrahamic elements and non-Abrahamic elements. This new political dispensation would give rise to intellectual transformation in that Muslim society, because Muslims were now being exposed to Greek thought and to Persian thought. Muslims will also begin to appropriate things that they got from the Abyssinians and from the Indians. And of course, the Umayyad would build the Dome of the Rock. That's one of their legacies. The Umayyad would integrate a number of the Christians and the Jews into their administration, because the Umayyads, like many of the Meccan traders, knew many of the Christians and the Jews who were living in Syria, even before Islam. And of course, these Umayyads would now begin to change a number of things. The Muslim intellectuals who are now identified with the Umayyad, and they will be instrumental in developing the intellectual justification for the monarchy that exists under the Umayyad, help create the consolidation of the teachings of Islam. Because one thing that became very evident is that if you just go back in time, between the time of Omar and Usman, the assembling of the fragments which go into the consolidation of the Quran as the book took place during that period. And during the period of the Umayyad, it was already widely disseminated all over where the where Muslims dominated. So this provided the opportunity for greater intellectual engagement between Muslims and the Ahlul Kitab, Muslims and other forms of thought. Muslims then were beginning to be exposed to Greek thought. And this will manifest itself between the time of the Umayyad, and I have to move fast, that's why I told you I'm taking you on a time machine. Between the time of the Umayyad and the time of the succeeding dynasty, the Abbasid, because as the Umayyad became increasingly unpopular in the Muslim circles, rival groups were beginning to mobilize themselves against them. And these rival groups would be linked to the Shiites and those who support them. And as a result of the political activism of these underground groups, the Umayyad family and clan would be wiped out. The story goes that they had a big banquet, and unbeknown to them, there was a lot of political intrigue to eliminate them. And except for one who escaped and ended up in Spain, Abdurrahman, most of the family members were eliminated. And this gives rise to the coming to power of a new dynasty. But what happened to the Umayyad is not an isolated case. This has always happened in history with dynasties. One dynasty, you look at British history, you can see that. One dynasty being replaced by another. And it happened in this particular case.